Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to start a Microsoft Entra ID crash course for beginners. My name is Jasmine and this channel is all about showing you how to become a highly paid cybersecurity, ethical hacking, or cloud pro fast. To begin with the course, it is necessary to have a basic idea of what Microsoft Entra ID is and how it works. First, we look at what is Microsoft Entra. Microsoft Entra is a cloud-based security and identity management product family from Microsoft. It combines several previously separate services under one umbrella to provide a more comprehensive and unified approach to securing your organization's resources and identities. Entra offers a suite of services to manage user identities, access controls, devices, applications, and data security across your organization's IT infrastructure. It brings together previously independent services like Azure Active Directory, now known as Entra ID, and Microsoft Intune into a single platform, simplifying administration and offering a more cohesive user experience. It prioritizes security by providing tools to enforce access controls, manage user identities securely, and protect devices and data from cyber threats. Now, the Microsoft Entra ID, formerly known as Azure Active Directory, is a core component of Entra, focusing specifically on managing user identities and access controls. It serves as a central repository for user identities, allowing you to manage user accounts, assign permissions, and enforce access policies across various applications and resources. Entra ID facilitates secure user logins, authentication, and determines access rights to applications and resources, authorization, based on assigned permissions. The purposes of Entra and Entra ID are to secure user access, simplify identity management, enhance security posture, improve user experience, and meet compliance requirements. So the first place to start is to open up the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. On the left, there are a bunch of options. These options include identity, protection, identity governance, verifiable credentials, permissions management, and global secure access, which is the newly introduced feature. The main focus of this video is the identity option. Now, if you expand it, you will see there are loads of options there. On the top, you will see an options bar here. First is the overview option. This tab provides a general summary or snapshot of the current status and settings of your Microsoft Entra ID, which includes the Azure Active Directory. The second is the monitoring option. Under this tab, you can monitor activities, logs, and other relevant data to keep track of the operations and security-related events within your Entra ID environment. The third is the Properties option. This section contains various settings and properties of your Entra ID that can be adjusted or viewed, such as configurations related to domains, licenses, and tenant details. The fourth is Recommendations. Here you'll find suggestions for improvements or changes based on the current configurations and best practices. It's a useful resource for optimizing and securing your Entra ID setup. And the last one is Tutorials. This tab provides guides and instructional materials to help users understand and utilize the features of Microsoft Entra ID effectively. Let's go to the Overview option. Here, under the Basic Information, you have key information about your tenant. First is the tenant's name, which in my case is In Technologies. Next is the tenant ID, which is a unique identifier for your tenant. Then there is a primary domain, which is associated with your tenant. Next is the license that indicates the type of license you have, which is Microsoft Entra ID Free in this case. Now, on the right side, there is some information about users, groups, applications, and devices. Below, you can see 3 alerts. One is the upcoming Azure AD rename. This alert notifies you that Azure Active Directory is being renamed to Microsoft Entra. There is no action required from you regarding this change. Second is the upcoming MFA server deprecation. This is a critical alert. You are advised to migrate from MFA Server to Azure AD Multi-Factor Authentication before September 2024 to prevent any service disruptions. The third is to migrate to the Converged Authentication Methods policy. This alert is urging you to move your authentication methods away from the legacy multi-factor authentication (MFA) and self-service password reset (SSPR) policies by September 2024 to avoid any impact on your services. These alerts are part of the ongoing updates and improvements in Microsoft Entra, which aim to enhance security and user experience. Now on the left side in the Settings dropdown, we have three options. The first one is the Preview Hub. This is likely a feature that allows administrators to preview and test new features, updates, or changes in Microsoft Entra before they are released to the general public. The next is Domain Names. This option would typically be used to manage and configure the domain names that are associated with your organization's Microsoft Entra ID. It may include adding custom domain names or configuring existing ones. Then there is Mobility. Mobility settings generally refer to Mobile Device Management, MDM, and Mobile Application Management, MAM settings. These settings help secure and manage your organization's mobile devices and the applications on them. Now, one of the basic things that you want to do while signing up for Microsoft Entra is creating a user. For that, just click on the Users option in the Identity drop-down menu. Next, go to All Users. Now click on New User. Here you will get two choices. One is creating a new user and the other is inviting an external user. So here I am going to create a new user. Now the first tab that opens when you click on New User asks about the basic information about the user. This information includes the principal name, display name, and password, which you can also generate automatically. Although the auto-generated password will be hard to remember. Next is the properties of the user account. First is the identity where you input the first and last name of the new user. Then there is a user type, a drop-down menu to select the type of user, typically member or guest. Next, there is authorization info, an option to edit certificate user IDs if applicable. After that, there is job information, fields for job title, company name, department, employee ID, employee type, and employee hire date. Next is the office location, a field to input the office location of the new user. Lastly, there is a manager option where you can add a manager for the new user. Next, there comes the contact information where you add the user's contact number, address, email, zip code, and a bunch of other information. One of the useful features you will find is the usage location. This setting is crucial because it determines the services and features that will be available to the user, as well as compliance with regional regulations. The location is currently set to United States, which means the user will have access to services and data protection regulations applicable to the United States. On next is the Assignments tab. The first option here is to add an administrative unit. This option allows you to assign the new user to an administrative unit. Administrative units can help manage users by grouping them based on departments, geographic locations, or other criteria. You can add a user to only one administrative unit. The second option is Add a Group. Here, you can add the new user to one or more groups. Groups are used to manage a collection of users and to provide access to resources or assign licenses collectively. The third and the last is the Add Role. This allows you to assign roles to the new user. Roles define what administrative permissions the user has within the organization, such as a global administrator or a user administrator. Here, keep in mind that Global Admin does have permission to do pretty much everything, so choose the role wisely. Now, if you click on Add Role, you will come across a long list of admin roles here. Now, to assign a role, simply check its box and click on Select. Further, if you do not assign any admin role, the user will have only regular user permissions. Once you have set the desired assignments to the user, click Next, and then review all of the settings you have done so far. Once you have verified the settings, click on Create. Now refresh the page and you will see the newly created user in the All Users list. you will see that the user account is now configured. The other things that you can do here is that you can see what groups this user has got. You can assign applications to this user, and more importantly, you can assign licenses to the user. In order to allow the user to use different apps in Microsoft 365, you might need to assign a license to the user. So here in Licenses, if you click on Assignments, then you will see different licenses that your organization has purchased. Now, when you select a license, there will be a list of apps that will appear right next to it. You can further choose which app you want to allow and which you don't want to allow to the user. Once you are done, save your license settings by clicking on the Save icon at the bottom. You might have a question that what if a person leaves the organization? In that case, you can delete the user, and do not worry if you forget to restore the data of that respective user. To delete a user, simply select it and then click on the Delete option on the top options bar. Now, if you forget to back up the data for the deleted user, simply go to the Deleted User option on the left pane. Here you will see the deleted user, which will be there for 30 days, and all of its data will also stay here for 30 days. Now, to restore a user, simply select it and then click on Restore Users option on the top menu bar. Now, coming to the groups, you can create new groups here as well. The first setting here is the group type. This allows you to select the type of group you are creating. The option Security is selected here, which typically means the group is intended for security-related permissions and access control. The other option is Microsoft 365, which typically means the group is intended for collaboration and can utilize Microsoft 365 services like Teams, SharePoint, and Exchange. Then you have to add a group name. Here you enter the name of the new group. This name should be descriptive and reflect the group's purpose or members. Next, there is a group description option. This field is for providing a description of the group, which can include information about its intended use or membership criteria. Then there is Azure AD roles can be assigned to the group permission. This toggle option, set to No by default, determines whether Azure AD roles can be assigned to the group. If set to Yes, the group can be used to assign administrative roles to all members of the group. Here I am using a trial version, so that's why I do not have this option here. Next, there is membership type settings. The Assigned option is selected, meaning members will be manually added to this group by an administrator. If the dynamic user is selected, members are added to the group automatically based on certain rules or conditions that are defined. In case you are creating a security group, you will see a third membership option named as Dynamic Device. Similar to dynamic user groups, dynamic device groups automatically include devices based on attributes like operating system, model, or other device properties. Here I am using a trial version, so that's why I do not have this option here. There are two other options that appear when you change the group type of 365. One is that it requires an email, and the second is the security label. This option would allow you to apply a sensitivity label to the group, categorizing it based on the level of sensitivity of the information that will be shared within the group. There are 4 labels that you may find in sensitivity labels. The first label is Highly Confidential or Project Obsidian. This label is likely the highest level of sensitivity, indicating that the group's content is extremely sensitive and should be handled with the utmost confidentiality. The second label is Secret. A step down from the highest level, this label still indicates a high level of sensitivity, requiring significant protection measures. The last one is the Manchester Confidential. This one likely pertains to confidential information specific to a project or location associated with Manchester. These sensitivity labels help in classifying groups according to the level of data sensitivity and determine how content within these groups should be handled, shared, and protected. It's an important part of data governance and compliance within an organization. Here I am using a trial version, so that's why I do not have this option here. Now you can add the owners for the group. Simply click on No Owners Selected and you will see a list of users on the right. This is useful as the owner can either add or invite members to the group. Next, you can add members to the group just in the same way as I did for adding an owner, or add dynamic query in case of security group. The dynamic membership rules are powerful for automatically managing group membership based on user attributes. They ensure that as user properties change, the group memberships are automatically updated without manual intervention. If you add the dynamic user, you will see the rule syntax automatically written defining the options. If you change the city or department, they will leave the group automatically. Once done with adding the dynamic user, save the configuration. The fun part is that, to enforce this rule, simply go to All Users option and from there go to the properties of the user. Now in the user properties, simply change its department to the same as the value added in dynamic user. It will make this user a member of that security group. Another important thing you should have knowledge about is the security of the user accounts. So if I go to the Overview tab in the Identity option, you will see a Security Defaults option in the Properties section of the tenant. Security defaults are basic identity security mechanisms that Microsoft recommends. When enabled, these settings are automatically enforced in your organization to protect administrators and users from common identity-related attacks. By enabling security defaults, your organization will benefit from protection measures such as requiring all users to register for Azure multi-factor authentication, blocking legacy authentication protocols that can be used to bypass authentication protections, requiring administrators to perform multi-factor authentication. These defaults are designed to ensure that your organization has a baseline level of security in place without having to configure each setting individually. It's a good practice to enable these settings, especially if you don't have specific security configurations in mind. Now, if I click on Manage Security Defaults, there will be a pop-up on the right side asking to enable it. However, before enabling it, remember that if you have any conditional access policy or security is already enforced, then they will be whipped out the moment you enable the security defaults. If this is a new tenant, then enable it and save the changes. The next important thing that you should really know for using Entra ID is the authentication methods. To find the authentication methods, simply go to the Protection drop-down menu. Once you click on Authentication Methods, you will come across several methods on the right. The first one is the FIDO2 security key. This is a hardware device used as a form of two-factor authentication that does not require a username or password. The second method is Microsoft Authenticator, an app that provides a second layer of security after your password, typically through a notification or a code generated on your smartphone. Now, if I click on Microsoft Authenticator, you can see that it can be set for selected groups or all users. Now, if I go to the Configure tab, the first setting you will see is if you want to activate the one-time passcode authentication, which is on by default. Further, there are 3 settings you can activate in Microsoft Authenticator. Number 1 is Require Number Matching for push notifications. This security feature, when enabled, requires users to match a number displayed on their screen with the number shown in the push notification on their Microsoft Authenticator app. It's an additional step to prevent unauthorized access. Number 2 is to show application name in push and passwordless notifications. When this option is enabled, the name of the application requesting authentication will be displayed in the push notification. This helps users to verify that the sign-in request is legitimate. Number 3 is to show geographic location in push and passwordless notifications. This feature, when enabled, shows the geographic location from where the sign-in request is originating in the push notification. It can alert users to potential unauthorized attempts to access their account from unexpected locations. The third authentication method is SMS, a text message sent to your mobile device that includes a code you use to sign in. The fourth one is the temporary access pass, a time-limited passcode that allows for secure registration and recovery of user accounts. It's particularly useful when a user doesn't have access to their authentication methods and needs a temporary way to authenticate. The fifth option is hardware oath tokens. These are physical devices using the oath TOTP standard and a secret key to generate 6-digit authentication codes. This policy specifically manages the registration and use of hardware oath tokens. The sixth option is third-party software oath tokens, generating 6-digit codes using the Oath TOTP standard. Configuration includes enabling the feature, specifying included or excluded users' groups, and setting registration as mandatory or optional. This policy controls their registration and use, excluding them as a first-factor authentication method. The seventh one is voice call, a phone call that provides a code verbally for authentication. The eighth one is email OTP, one-time password, a temporary code sent to your email address that you use to authenticate. The ninth and the last one is certificate-based authentication. It uses digital certificates to verify identity, often used in enterprise environments for secure access. In the Configuration tab, you can see there are two options. One is authentication binding, and the other is username binding. Authentication binding setting allows you to define the strength and affinity of your certificate-based authentication policy. You can choose between single-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication for the protection level, low affinity or high affinity binding, which determines how strictly the user's session is tied to the certificate. You can also add special rules based on the certificate issuer, policy OID, authentication strength, and affinity binding to override default settings. The username binding setting enables you to link a user attribute in the cloud with a field from the X509 certificate. This helps in verifying the user's identity during the authentication process. You can add rules to specify which certificate field, like subject name, SN, corresponds to which user attribute, like user principal name and email. These settings are crucial for ensuring that only authenticated users with valid certificates can access your organization's resources. By fine-tuning these options, you can enhance security and ensure compliance with your organization's policies. These methods are part of a policy to configure the authentication options available to users for signing in and for password reset operations. It's important to note that some methods may not be supported for password reset. The last thing that I am going to discuss is the Entra Verifiable Credentials, which involve having a digital ID. Verifiable credentials are a type of digital document that allows users to control and share their identity information in a secure and verifiable way. They are issued by organizations, issuers, and contain claims about a user's identity attributes, for example, name, email, job title, and educational qualifications. Unlike traditional digital certificates, verifiable credentials are cryptographically signed, ensuring their authenticity and integrity. Here in the Identity menu, you can see an option for applications that is crucial for managing applications within Microsoft Entra Identity, which is part of Azure Active Directory, Azure AD. The first section here is Enterprise Applications. This section is where you manage access to third-party cloud applications that your organization uses. Here you can set up single sign-on, SSO, so users don't have to remember multiple passwords. Configure user provisioning to automate the creation, update, and removal of user accounts in these applications. Apply conditional access policies to control how and when users can access these applications, enhancing security. The second section or option is App Registrations. This is the area where developers register their applications to integrate with Azure AD. It allows them to set up redirect URIs, which are the endpoints to which the authentication responses are sent, request permissions from users to access their Azure AD data, configure the authentication methods that the application will accept. Both options are essential for ensuring that only authorized users have access to your organization's applications and data. They also help in maintaining a secure and efficient IT environment. This option is particularly useful for developers and IT administrators who are looking to add new applications that need to authenticate users through Azure AD. It streamlines the process of setting up new applications and managing their access to organizational resources. If you're planning to add a new application, clicking on this option will guide you through the necessary steps to register the application and configure its settings according to your organization's security and compliance requirements. The next important option in enterprise applications is conditional access and consent and permissions. The conditional access feature allows administrators to implement access controls for applications based on certain conditions. It can include user or group membership, IP location information, device compliance status, application sensitivity, real-time, and calculated risk levels. Conditional access policies help protect your organization's applications by ensuring that only the right people under the right conditions have access. The Consent and Permissions section deals with managing the permissions that applications need to function and the consent process for users. It includes configuring which permissions an application can request, reviewing and approving permission requests from applications, monitoring and auditing consent grants by users. This helps in maintaining control over what data applications can access and ensuring that users are aware of the permissions they grant. Both options are part of a robust security strategy, ensuring that access to enterprise applications is secure and compliant with your organization's policies. Entra Verified ID is a managed service within Entra that facilitates the issuance, verification, and management of verifiable credentials. It acts as a bridge between issuers, organizations, and verifiers, applications or services that need to rely on user-controlled identity information. To configure Entra Verifiable Credentials, click on the Verifiable ID option in the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. Then you will see 3 steps that you need to do. First is Define Organization Settings. This step involves confirming your organization's details, such as the name and contact information. You'll also need to select an Azure subscription and a key vault where your organization's decentralized identity, DID, will be stored. The DID is a unique identifier that is created for your organization to participate in the Verifiable Credentials ecosystem. Second is Register Decentralized ID. After defining your organization settings, you'll register your DID. This involves uploading a DID document, which is a JSON file that contains the public keys and service endpoints necessary for others to interact with your DID. This document enables applications and services to verify the credentials issued by your organization and allows your organization to verify credentials from others. Second is Register Decentralized ID. After defining your organization settings, you'll register your DID. This involves uploading a DID document, which is a JSON file that contains the public keys and service endpoints necessary for others to interact with your DID. This document enables applications and services to verify the credentials issued by your organization and allows your organization to verify credentials from others. That's it for today's video. I have explained all the major concepts of Microsoft Entra. Let me know in the comments about this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Check out the video on the right for more content to help you develop your IT career.